I never thought I'd wake up one morning to see a bulldozer chewing through my backyard, the very patch of land where I'd planted trees with my own hands. And I sure as hell didn't think I'd watch the city weeks later pour concrete into a half-built pool the HOA had stolen from me. But that's exactly what happened, and it all started with one strange noise on a quiet morning. I'd just come back from my walk sipping coffee when I heard it deep, metallic, unfamiliar. Not the sound of lawnmowers or leaf blowers I'd grown used to, but something heavier. I stepped onto my porch, looked toward the fence, and froze. There they were, men in orange vests lowering rebar into a pit. And next to them, standing like she owned the world, was Deborah Templeton, president of our HOA, arms crossed, sunglasses on, pointing at blueprints. On my land. At first I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was on the property line, maybe some utility repair. But the pit stretched 10-15 feet into my yard. That was my slope. My fig trees used to grow there. I marched back inside, grabbed my land deeds old surveys, even the plat map from 2001, and went right back out. I asked one of the workers what the hell they were building. He looked at me like I was interrupting his lunch break. Pool, he said. HOA's orders. Pool. On my property. I called the HOA office, no answer. I sent emails, nothing. So I drove straight to their headquarters, a little house they'd converted into a welcome center. I told the receptionist what was happening. She smiled like she'd been expecting me. And out came Templeton herself, red jacket folder under her arm, that smug grin plastered on her face. I told her she was trespassing, and she coolly laid out a laminated map showing my land suddenly carved up as community green space. I couldn't believe it. I told her I had the real maps stamped and recorded by the city. She didn't flinch. The board voted unanimously, she said. Construction has begun. Reversal isn't likely. Reversal isn't likely, just like that 20 years of my property turned into a public pool. That night I stood by the fence staring at the muddy hole where my trees had stood. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured strangers swimming, kids splashing 10 feet from my window like I didn't exist. It felt like theft, plain and simple. But worse, it felt like I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. Days passed and the hole turned into concrete. Rebar tiles stacked plumbing pipes sticking up like weeds. I kept pushing. I went to the county recorder's office myself, and sure enough the clerk confirmed it: no change, no rezoning, no easement. The HOA map was fake. I thought that would end it, but when I brought the proof to Templeton, she just smiled. "We've consulted our legal committee," she said like she was reading off a cue card. Then came the retaliation. A letter in my mailbox, fines for my fence, fines for my security camera, even a complaint about my porch light. I laughed when I read it, laughing to keep from breaking something. They were playing dirty, and the message was clear: shut up, or we'll bury you in paperwork. For the first time in my life, I doubted myself. Maybe I was being stubborn. Maybe it was easier to let it go, let them build their stupid pool. Who was I to fight an entire board, an entire neighborhood? I sat up late one night staring at the paperwork spread across my kitchen table, wondering if I'd made a mistake. My blood pressure was through the roof. My sleep gone, my neighbors glaring at me like I was the villain. Maybe I was. But then I thought about the years I'd spent in the Air Force. The lines I'd drawn on maps, the missions where precision meant survival. And I realized this was no different. A boundary is a boundary. You let someone redraw it, once they'll redraw it again. That was the night I decided I wasn't backing down. I called in favors. An old buddy from municipal inspection confirmed the construction was illegal. City officials came tape in hand and slapped a bright orange halt order on the fence. For the first time in weeks, the machines went silent. I should have felt relief, but I knew it was just the eye of the storm. Sure enough, a few days later, I found a letter slipped under my door. "You're hurting your neighbors. You're selfish. Back off. No name." Then came the sabotage. My mailbox kicked in oil, dumped into the pit dog crap left at my gate. I started documenting everything: photos, timestamps, copies of every notice. If they wanted war, they were going to get it documented in high definition. The turning point came when I hired a private surveyor. Young guy, but sharp. We walked the whole property line and he planted bright orange stakes every 15 feet. When he finished, the truth was undeniable: more than half the pool sat inside my land. I printed the survey on a giant board black tape around the edges like a court exhibit and carried it into the next HOA meeting. The clubhouse was packed. Neighbors shoulder to shoulder, everyone buzzing. I stood in front, held up the board, and said, "This is my property. The city confirms it. The pool you're building sits on stolen ground." Gasps, murmurs. Templeton tried to cut me off, but then one of her own board members stood up. Marvin Bell, the quiet accountant type. His voice shook as he admitted the truth: there had never been a vote. Templeton made it up. The room erupted. People shouting some cursing, some staring at Templeton like they'd just seen behind the mask for the first time. Her face went crimson. She tried to regain control, but it was too late. The lie was out. From that moment, the walls closed in on her. The city launched a full investigation. Fraud, misuse of funds, fake documents. Then came the order from the court the pool was illegal, unsafe, and contaminated. Demolition was required. The morning the trucks arrived, I stood on my porch watching them roll in city vehicles, hard hats, concrete mixers. A crowd gathered by the fence. The workers dropped red hazard tape, fired up the mixers, and began pouring a gray waterfall straight into the pit. Templeton showed up, heels clicking, screaming that they had no right, waving her laminated map in the air. The supervisor didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, this is private property verified by the city and the court." And then the concrete kept flowing, burying every lie she'd told. I didn't gloat. I didn't say a word. I just watched as the pool, her grand project, her weapon, disappeared under the weight of cement. Her voice grew weaker, swallowed by the sound of steel and stone. And when it was over, all that remained was a flat slab where my garden once stood, silent and final. That was the day Deborah Templeton lost everything. Her seat, her power, her reputation gone. And the HOA that had ruled over us like a little kingdom began to crumble with her. And me, I finally exhaled. Not because I'd won, but because the line was visible again. Never let anyone tell you your silence means consent.